Today, I'm going to be breaking down some of my favorite cash game plays for the Week 4 NFL Draftkings main slate. And like I always do in these videos, I'll go position by position, talking about why I like each of these plays. With that being said, let's dive right into this. And we're going to kick things off here at the quarterback position. Now, I want to start by saying if you want to spend down at the quarterback position this week in the 5K range, there are some decent plays there. We got Brock Purdy, Matt Stafford, Russ Wilson. I was really hoping that Andy Dalton would play, but it sounds like Bryce Young's going to be good to go. My favorite play of those is Brock Purdy. I'm actually going to highlight him at the end of this video as an honorable mention. But look, if I can spend up for Jalen Hurts or Anthony Richardson this week at the quarterback position, I want to do that in my cash lineup. First, we got Hurts here at $8,000 on DraftKings. Need about 24 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 3x value. And I like this matchup at home here this week against the Washington Commanders. Hurts has been awesome versus zone defenses, and that's primarily what this Commanders defense runs. As you can see here, he's got the 7th most fantasy points per dropback against zone, and this Washington defense is running zone about 72% of the time. Now, if I want to save some money off of Jalen Hurts, I really like Anthony Richardson as well here this week, playing at home against the Los Angeles Rams. He has cleared concussion protocol, got the word here today. He will start on Sunday. Now, he's priced at $6,700, so we need about 20.1 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 3x value. And I know he got banged up in his second game. He's essentially played just 5 quarters of football so far this year, but he ranks first overall right now in terms of fantasy points per dropback for all quarterbacks. Again, a small sample size, but what we've seen from him so far has looked really good. And he's the prototypical type of quarterback that I'm trying to get in my cash lineup more weeks than not. Someone who offers a safe floor with their rushing upside, but also has really high ceiling potential considering the type of player they are. Now, moving over here to the running back position, and I'm pretty positive I'll be locking in Christian McCaffrey to my cash lineup this week. $9,200 on DraftKings and a great matchup at home against the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, we need 27.6 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 3x value. That is a high number, but we all know that CMC can get there. We did see his snap count reduced in week 3. We knew that in advance. Kyle Shanahan said he wanted to do that, but the touches were still there. If this guy's on the field, they're getting him the ball. He's averaging close to 24 touches per game and close to 141 yards per game. He's also scored a touchdown in 12 straight games as well, and as you can see here, this Cards defense is allowing the 7th most yards after contact to running backs. Needless to say, a really good matchup for CMC. And then I'm looking at this game here between the Colts and Rams. I think both of these starting running backs here are cash game viable. We got Kyren Williams of the Rams, Zach Moss of the Colts, both sitting at $6,000 on DraftKings. So we need 18 DraftKings points for both of these guys to meet 3x value. Now, I prefer Williams over Moss, largely due to Anthony Richardson coming back for the Colts here this week. He very well could vulture some carries away from Moss, and more importantly, once they get in the red zone, he could vulture some touchdowns away from him. So yeah, that's why I prefer Williams over Moss here, but again, think both are cash game viable. Let's start by highlighting Williams here. You can see he's played 95% of the snaps in his last 2 games, averaging 16 touches and close to 83 yards per game. And over the last 2 weeks, he actually leads all running backs across the NFL with a 77% route run rate. So he's on the field. He hasn't been the most efficient running back so far this year, but when it comes to my cash lineup, I'm looking for volume, and Kyren Williams is getting that for the Rams. And that's been the case for Zach Moss as well, playing 76% of the snaps in each of his last 2 games. And while I do think these numbers here are probably going to come down here sooner than later, he's averaged 27 touches and close to 126 total yards per game. Really hard to ignore those numbers for the time being. Plus, this Rams defense hasn't been stellar versus running backs. They've allowed the 4th highest yards per carry to zone runs, and so far this year, Zach Moss has had 85% of his runs on zone plays. Now, folks, before we dive into the wide receivers here, a few things I want to mention. For starters, we're trying to get Slydog Sports to 4,000 subs. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. You guys probably aren't aware how much you help out with that. For every view I get, YouTube pushes it to 2 new people, and the same thing for subs as well. So help me out if you can. Like that video, subscribe to the channel. Plus, I'm also running a Draftkings league in a Discord channel. Both of those are completely free to join. If you want to do that, there's links in the description below to do so. Now let's talk some wide receivers here, and there are some really nice tier 1 wide receivers on the main slate this week. Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, I even think Jamar Chase and Devontae Adams are cash game viable, but I'm looking at Keenan Allen here, man. $7,900 in a great matchup at home against the Raiders this week. Need 23.7 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 3x value. This is a guy right now who's top 10 in target share, targets per route run, receptions, receiving yards, and yards after the catch. Plus, on top of that, he's second in the NFL with 39 targets, where he's seen 9 in Game 1, 10 in Game 2, and 20 last week against the Minnesota Vikings. No reason to think he won't get close to 10 plus here this week, especially with Mike Williams out. Now, another guy that I like from this game between the Rams and Colts is Puka Nacua of the Los Angeles Rams. Yes, his price continues to go up on DraftKings, but for all the right reasons. He's priced at $6,700 on the main slate here this week, so we need 20.1 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 3x value. But this is a guy who's leading the entire NFL right now with 42 targets. That's a 31.7 target share on his team, and he's also seen close to 31% of the team's air yards. And what I really like about this matchup here is how good Puka's been against zone defenses. I know it's been a small sample size. He's only been in the NFL for 3 weeks, but in those 3 games, he's averaged 3.44 yards per route run versus zone. And again, this Colts defense runs zone about 80% of the time. And then I got a couple of wide receivers here in the 4K range that I want to highlight, offering some nice value in my opinion. I actually talked about both of these guys in my first look video on Tuesday, and nothing has really changed here on Friday. First one that I got there is Tank Dell of the Houston Texans, sitting at $4,600 on DraftKings this week, so we need 13.8 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 3x value. He's cleared that in each of his last 2 games. In fact, he's gone for 20 plus DraftKings points in those games. And I want to say he's taken over as the number 1 wide receiver in this offense, but he's close. I think it's still Nico Collins, but I love the chemistry I've seen with Dell and CJ Stroud so far. In fact, Dell is seeing 25% of the team's first read share, so Stroud clearly trusts throwing the ball to him. He's also seen 22% of the team's target share and 33% of the team's air yards. Plus, this Pittsburgh defense hasn't been stellar versus wide receivers, ranking 27th overall in fantasy points per game. And then I got the hometown Minnesota native Adam Thielen going up against his former team in the Minnesota Vikings, sitting at $4,500 on DraftKings this week, so we need 13.5 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 3x value. I know a lot of people are looking at his game last week saying, yeah, he only balled out because it was Andy Dalton who was at quarterback. Okay, that's fine, but if we look back to week 2 here when Bryce Young was still playing, Adam Thielen saw 27% target share in that game and close to 33% of the team's air yards, finished with 20 DraftKings points, and that was with a touchdown. If we take the touchdown away, I think he had 12.5 DraftKings points. That's all we need here from Thielen at this price. Plus, this Minnesota Vikings secondary has been horrendous to start the season. And then I got a couple of tight ends here, but to be honest, everyone, the tight end position, in my opinion, is just flat out gross here in week 4. Really curious if you guys are going to spend up for George Kittle this week or just kind of say fuck it and spend down, punt at the position. I'm really leaning towards the latter there, just spending down and hoping for the best, kind of just throwing up a Hail Mary. I don't mind Pat Freiermuth here, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The volume hasn't been great for him this year, but at $3,400 against Houston, I kind of don't mind it. We need 10.2 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 3x value, and this Texans defense is allowing the 9th most receiving yards and 10th most fantasy points per game to tight ends this year. Again, a small sample size, but the numbers look good here heading into week 4. He has also seen close to 15% of the team's first read share, so I don't mind that either, and he does lead all Steelers in red zone targets as well, so he does have that going for him, but again, basically just punting at this position here this week. That's the way I'm kind of approaching it. And then if I feel I need to save money off of Freiermuth, I don't mind Logan Thomas of the Washington Commanders. Coming back from injury, but it sounds like he's going to be healthy heading into Sunday. $3,100, we need 9.3 DraftKings points in order for him to meet 3x value. And honestly, everyone, I actually don't mind the matchup here against the Philadelphia Eagles. This Eagles defense has allowed the 3rd most receiving yards, 4th most receptions, and the most fantasy points to tight ends so far this year. Again, a small sample size, but they really just say, I'm not too worried about the tight end position. I'm going to try and stop everything else. And then the defense that I want to put in my cash lineup here this week is the Cleveland Browns, sitting at $2,800 on DraftKings. We need 8.4 DraftKings points in order for them to meet 3x value. If you need to save money off of that, you could certainly go to the Carolina Panthers, but I want to put in Cleveland if at all possible, because this defense has just been flat out outstanding to start the season. They've allowed a total of 18 points through 3 weeks. 18 total points through 3 games. That is absolutely absurd. They've allowed 0.51 points per drive. They've had the 3rd best pressure rate at 40%, and they're allowing just 164 yards per game as well. Sure, Lamar Jackson could certainly put up more points this week, put up more yards as an offense as a whole. That's what Lamar Jackson can do, but at $2,800 here, I think we're truly getting some value on what looks to be the best defense here through 3 weeks of the season. And as always, going to wrap up the video here with those cash game honorable mentions. Going to go through these pretty quickly, but if you're interested in learning more about why I like these plays, again, let me know in the comments below or join that Discord channel. Link to do so in the description below. First one I got there is Brock Purdy of the 49ers. Think he's a nice play in the 5K range at the quarterback position. 2 running backs that I think we could pivot to in the 5K range. Miles Sanders of the Carolina Panthers. Good matchup against Minnesota. And Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos. I don't love the idea of putting Broncos in my cash lineup, but he does truly have a great matchup against the Chicago Bears. Yeah, Joshua Palmer against the Raiders. Think he's a nice play at 4K, especially with Mike Will out. And Josh Downs, again, if we're really looking for savings, he doesn't look bad at $3,500. Saw 12 targets last week, albeit with Gardner Minshew. Hard to ignore the volume he's getting at that price. All right, everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank y'all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Let's have ourselves a great weekend here, folks. Let's win some money on this week for main slate. In the meantime, I'm out of here.